All right, so we're diving into Sumcoin today.
An index-based cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Honestly, you had me at index-based.
Hmm.
We've got their white paper right here, the website, FAQs, even some diagrams.
Lots to unpack here.
It looks like they've put a lot of work into this. And you know our listeners, always eager to get ahead.
Right.
Want to know if some coin's worth their time. So should we jump right in?
Let's dive in. The really intriguing thing about Sumcoin is how they're positioning themselves. Right from the start, they're aiming to fulfill Bitcoin's original promise. True peer-to-peer, electronic cash.
I like it. Cutting out the middleman, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, so looking at Sumcoin's website here, they're calling themselves a global decentralized digital currency, aiming for, let me guess, stability, speed, and security.
Of course, everyone says that,
Nice.
right?
Right. It's practically in the crypto marketing starter pack at this point. But hold on a minute. Index-based. Now, this is where things get a bit more interesting.
Definitely, and they're serious about this. Even their logo, it's a white Greek sigma on a blue background.
Ah, very clever.
Yeah.
Summation for anyone who remembers their math classes anyway.
Exactly. They're all about that index approach.
Okay, got it.
All right.
So they're tracking a bunch of different cryptos, but how exactly? Is it like, say, an index fund, but for crypto?
It's a good analogy, but there's a key difference. See, Sumcoin doesn't own any of the cryptocurrencies that it tracks. It's not like an index fund that holds shares in companies. Think of it more like the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It reflects the combined value of those 30 major companies, but it doesn't actually own them. Sumcoin's similar. It mirrors the market's performance, by tracking the top 100 cryptocurrencies by market cap.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's more like taking the temperature of the entire market. You're not just betting on one horse in the race, you're betting on the whole field.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And hang on, I think I saw in their materials that this whole index idea isn't new for them, is it? Didn't they say something about 2016?
Right. Sumcoin was actually conceived back in 2016, and they mined their first block in 2018. They were talking about index-based crypto before it was cool.
Wow, 2016. That's what, almost a decade ago in crypto years? So they were pretty early on this. But here's the thing. They decided to skip the whole ICO craze, right? All those flashy token sales were huge back then.
That did, which is unusual.
Right. It seems like they're really going for the whole slow and steady wins the race kind of approach.
Hmm.
It's certainly a bold move in the crypto world, which, as we know, is not exactly known for its patience. But what do you make of that? Does it make them more trustworthy? Or is it a bit of a red flag?
That's the question, isn't it? On one hand, it could show that they're serious, that they're in it for the long haul, they believe in their vision enough to grow organically. But on the other hand, you have to wonder why they didn't go for that initial investment.
Right, right. So maybe they're playing the long game. Or maybe they just couldn't get the funding. Tough to say. But let's get real here. Why should our listener, who values control and security above all else, care about this index-based approach? What's in it for them?
Now, that's where things get really interesting. It's all about that original promise of Bitcoin, remember? Peer-to-peer electronic cash. Sumcoin really zeroes in on that in their white paper.
Yeah, the dream. No banks, no intermediaries, just pure decentralized transactions. That was the whole idea, right?
Right. But here's the thing. How much of the crypto trading today actually happens that way? Most of it still goes through those big centralized exchanges.
Yeah.
And those exchanges, well, they're not exactly immune to hacks or manipulation, are they?
Okay, so Sumcoin sees this reliance on exchanges as, what do they call it? Bitcoin's broken promise. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?
Maybe a tad dramatic, but it gets your attention right. And it does highlight a real issue for anyone who's serious about, the core principles of decentralized finance.
Okay, fair point. So how does Sumcoin actually sidestep this whole exchange problem? What are they doing differently?
They break it down into what they call their trifecta of differences: algorithmic pricing, proof of stake, and that decentralized network structure we talked about earlier. And honestly, it's more than just fancy marketing this time. These differences are pretty significant.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break down then. First up, algorithmic pricing. We've established it's index-based. But how does that actually determine Sumcoin's value?
All right, so picture this. Sumcoin's constantly tracking the market cap of those top 100 cryptos, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the big players, and it uses this proprietary formula to basically calculate a weighted average. So you're basically looking at a number that represents the total market cap of all those coins.
Right.
And that number, that's what drives the price of Sumcoin.
So instead of being at the mercy of what supply and demand on a single exchange, Sumcoin is more like this diversified portfolio.
Exactly. Some coins' fate is tied to the overall health of the crypto market, not
Hmm.
just, the whims of traders on one specific platform.
I see. So for our listeners who might be a little hesitant to go all in on something as volatile as Bitcoin, some coin offers, theoretically at least,
Yeah.
a bit more stability.
Right, exactly. Less roller coaster, more like, maybe a steadily rising Ferris wheel.
I like that analogy. Okay, on to the second point in this trifecta proof of stake. And look, you had me at energy efficient. You know how much we care about the environment on this show. Tell me more about this.
Of course. So the traditional way of mining cryptocurrency, proof of work, it's incredibly energy intensive. You've got these massive server farms all over the planet just crunching numbers 24/7 to validate transactions.
Yeah, not exactly eco-friendly.
Not at all. Now, Sumcoin actually started with proof of work, but they made the switch to proof of stake back in 2023. And this was a big deal for them, both in terms of, their carbon footprint and their overall speed. See, with proof of stake, the people who actually own some coin, the stakeholders, use their existing coins to validate the transactions.
So instead of needing all that electricity, all those servers, they're using their stake in this system as a kind of, what, collateral?
Precisely. It's like a guarantee, right? They're saying, hey, I've got skin in the game. I'm not going to mess this up. And because it doesn't require all that computational power, it's also way faster.
How much faster are we talking?
We're talking 60-second block confirmation times compared to Bitcoin's 10 minutes. That's a big
That's
difference.
huge. Okay, so some coin transactions are quicker and they're less harmful to the planet. This trifecta is shaping up nicely. But what about the big one? Security. If we're relying on this distributed network of stakeholders, doesn't that open up some new vulnerabilities? I mean, couldn't someone just, I don't know, manipulate the system if they held enough some coin?
That's where their decentralized network structure comes in. It's like their answer to that whole security question. Remember those diagrams we were looking at before? The ones comparing the centralized systems to the decentralized ones?
Oh, yeah. The one where it's like downloading a file from one, overloaded server versus getting it from like a bunch of your friends at the same time.
Exactly. Way faster, way more reliable.
Right, right.
So Sumcoin, they operate on a network of nodes, and these nodes are basically just computers running the Sumcoin software. And here's the key. Each node holds a complete copy of the entire blockchain.
Okay.
So there's no single point of failure. There's no central authority that you have to trust.
So it's like even if one of these nodes goes down, the whole network, it just keeps on chugging along.
Exactly. Much harder to hack, much harder to manipulate. It's all about that resilience.
That's reassuring to hear. But, this is all sounding good in theory, but let's bring it back down to earth for a second. How does this actually work in practice? Can you walk me through, like, a typical Sumcoin transaction?
Sure. So say you want to, I don't know, buy a cup of coffee with Sumcoin, right?
Okay, my kind of transaction.
So you pull out your Sumcoin wallet app and you send, the required amount to the coffee shop's wallet address.
Simple enough. What happens then?
That transaction request, it gets broadcast across the entire Sumcoin network. All those nodes we were talking about, they get to work. They verify you actually have the Sumcoin to spend, make sure you haven't already sent it somewhere else, all the usual stuff.
And this all happens, what, instantaneously?
Pretty much. Remember those 60-second block confirmation times?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So much faster than waiting for a bank transfer to clear or something.
Exactly. It's what makes Sumcoin actually practical to use for everyday transactions. Even those tiny micropayments where you need that, near instant confirmation.
Interesting. So the transaction goes through, my coffee is paid for. Where does the blockchain come in?
All right, so once your transaction is verified, it gets bundled together with a bunch of other recent transactions into what's called a block.
Okay.
And then that block is added to the Sumcoin blockchain permanently. And here's the thing. Every node on the network, they all get a copy of this updated blockchain.
So there's a record of my coffee purchase on thousands of computers all over the world.
Pretty much.
Wow. Okay. Starting to see the appeal here. It seems like some coin really wants to be used as an actual currency, not just another one of those, speculative assets.
Right, exactly. And they're really sticking to that organic growth strategy we talked about. No ICO, no pre-mining. They claim their growth is all down to, actual people using it for transactions, especially in countries with high inflation, actually.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
When your own currency is unstable, you start looking for alternatives. And something like some coin, fast, stable, low transaction fees, it starts to sound pretty good. You mentioned they're gaining some traction in places like, what was it, Venezuela, Argentina.
Yeah, and even here in the US, actually, it's becoming a global phenomenon.
It's wild to think about. And this is where I think things get really interesting for some coin, right? What happens when governments, actual governments, start launching their own digital currencies?
Gov coins.
Yeah, the gov coins. What happens when those gov coins become, popular enough, legitimate enough that they crack that top 100 cryptocurrency list?
Right.
Some coin
Yeah.
starts indexing them. That's fascinating. It's like they'd be betting on the success of the very thing that cryptocurrency was trying to move away from? It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
It really is, because if Sumcoin, this decentralized system that wants to, level the financial playing field, if their fate is tied to the performance of, say, a digital dollar or a digital yuan, what does that say about the future of all of this? Does it validate what they're doing, or does it undermine the whole point of it?
It's like, I don't know, financial Ouroboros or something. That symbol of the snake eating its own tail. The decentralized system finding its success by essentially incorporating the centralized system that it was trying to move away from.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating question, and one I think our listeners should really think about. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Learning, questioning, challenging our own assumptions. That's how we make sense of something as complex and as rapidly changing as the world of cryptocurrency.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So there you have it, Sumcoin. We've covered a lot of ground today, from their unusual index-based pricing model to their energy-efficient proof-of-stake system, their emphasis on decentralization, their claims to be used as an everyday currency, and of course that really interesting question about the role of government-backed digital currencies in all of this. We'll be sure to include links to Sumcoin's white paper, their open source code, all that good stuff in the show notes.